How did people trade across an entire continent before roads and before horses? You've probably seen maps of the Silk Road in Asia, but what about the equally massive ancient trade networks that crisscrossed North and South America for thousands of years? We're often taught that large-scale trade here only began with European arrival, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In this video, we're going to uncover the incredible forgotten story of these sophisticated systems, precious goods, and sprawling cities that connected diverse cultures from the Great Lakes all the way to the Andes long before Columbus ever set sail. This isn't just about the past. It's about reframing how we understand the history of this land. So let's rewind the clock way back. The idea that Indigenous America was made up of isolated, static tribes is a complete myth. For at least 10,000 years, this continent was a bustling network of exchange. People weren't just trading physical goods. They were trading ideas, technologies, agricultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. Imagine a world where your survival and prosperity depended not on isolation, but on your connections to people hundreds, even thousands of miles away. That was the reality. Archaeological evidence shows that items from the Pacific coast have been found in the Midwest, and materials from the Great Lakes have been discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. This wasn't accidental. These were intentional, well-established routes traveled by traders for generations. This trade was the lifeblood of societies, enabling the growth of complex cultures and massive population centers. It was a dynamic, interconnected world that Europeans simply walked into and failed to fully understand. Forget the image of primitive, disconnected groups. We're talking about a continent-wide web of commerce and culture. So, what exactly were they trading? It wasn't just about basic survival items. People were trading for luxury goods, sacred materials, and items that signified status and power. Let's start with obsidian. This volcanic glass is sharper than a surgical scalpel and was prized for making razor-sharp tools, blades, and ceremonial objects. But here's the thing. Obsidian comes from very specific volcanic sources. Archaeologists can trace an obsidian artifact right back to its home volcano, and they found obsidian from sources in present-day Wyoming all the way down in Ohio, over 1,000 miles away. This tells us these weren't just casual handoffs. They were part of a dedicated supply chain. Then there's copper. The Great Lakes region, especially around Lake Superior, was a major source of pure, native copper. For thousands of years, indigenous peoples mined this copper not by smelting it, but by cold hammering it into intricate items, tools, jewelry, and sacred objects. This Great Lakes copper has been found as far south as Florida and Louisiana, often in the burial mounds of important individuals, showing its immense value. And it wasn't just hard materials. Shells, particularly marine shells from the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic coast, were another highly sought-after trade good. Conch shells, whelk shells, and lightning whelk shells were transformed into beautiful gorgets, pendants, and beads. These weren't just pretty ornaments. they carried deep spiritual meaning. A lightning whelk shell found in a burial mound in Illinois, 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean, tells a story of a journey of connections, of shared beliefs that transcended geography. Turquoise from the southwest, mica from the Appalachian Mountains, pipestone from Minnesota. Each material tells a part of this epic story of continental exchange. So, how did these goods travel such vast distances without wheels or domesticated pack animals like horses? They traveled along extensive networks of trade routes, primarily following major river systems. Think of the Mississippi, the Missouri, the Ohio, and the Arkansas rivers as the superhighways of their day. These waterways connected the heart of the continent to the Gulf Coast, the Great Lakes, and the eastern seaboard. Traders would use dugout canoes, some capable of carrying several tons of cargo, to navigate these rivers. It was faster, easier, and safer than trekking overland through dense forests and difficult terrain. But there were also crucial overland trails, footpaths worn into the earth over centuries of use. The Great Warrior Path in the southeast and the Natchez Trace are just two examples of these ancient highways. These routes didn't just connect A to B, they had nodes, hubs, and rest stops, much like our modern highway system. These north-south corridors were especially important. They facilitated the movement of not just goods, but also agricultural innovations. The spread of maize, or corn, from its origins in Mesoamerica northward into what is now the United States was a slow, multi-millennial process that followed these very trade routes. It was this agricultural revolution, fueled by trade, that allowed for the rise of large, settled communities and the incredible cities that followed. Perhaps no place illustrates the scale and sophistication of this network better than the ancient city of Cahokia. Located near modern-day St. Louis, Cahokia was, around the year 1100 AD, the largest city north of Mexico, with a population estimated at 10,000 to 20,000 people. It was larger than London or Paris at the time. It was a metropolis of massive earthen mounds, sprawling plazas, and a complex, stratified society. But Cahokia didn't exist in a vacuum. It was the epicenter of a vast trade network known as the Mississippian culture. Archaeological finds at Cahokia are stunning. We find marine shells from the Gulf of Mexico, copper from the Great Lakes, mica from the Carolinas, and cherta type of rock for tool making from Oklahoma and Tennessee. This wasn't a local market, it was an international hub. Even more fascinating are the connections to Mesoamerica, to the great civilizations of the Maya and the Aztec. While direct continuous contact is still debated, the evidence of influence is undeniable. Certain pottery styles, artistic motifs like the weeping eye, and specific iconographies found at Cahokia and other Mississippian sites bear a striking resemblance to those found hundreds of miles to the south. There are even bowl courts found at some Mississippian sites that are similar in design to those in Mesoamerica. Did traders from Cahokia travel all the way to Mexico, or did ideas and goods filter up through a chain of intermediaries? We don't know for sure, but it's clear that the worlds of North and Central America were far more connected than we ever imagined. Cahokia stands as a breathtaking testament to the power of indigenous trade and cultural exchange. So why does any of this matter today? Because understanding this history fundamentally changes our perception of the Americas before 1492. It shatters the myth of a primitive, empty wilderness waiting to be discovered. The Americas were a vibrant, populated, and deeply interconnected world. The people who lived here were not passive subjects of history. They were innovators, explorers, engineers, and diplomats who built complex societies and managed continent-spanning networks for millennia. Recognizing this rich history is a matter of respect. It allows us to see indigenous peoples not as relics of the past, but as the inheritors of a profound and resilient legacy of civilization. This history also challenges us to think differently about trade itself, not just as economic transactions, but as a powerful force for cultural exchange, innovation, and human connection. The story of these ancient trade routes is an essential and often overlooked chapter in the story of humanity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the deep past. I hope it gave you a new perspective on the incredible history of this continent. What part of this ancient trade network surprised you the most? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this and want to learn more hidden histories, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue to tell these important stories. Thanks for watching.